Emma Hale Smith Bidamon was born in Harmony, Pennsylvania, the seventh of 9 children. In 1825, she meets a young Joseph Smith who boards with the Hale family while working for a man named Josiah Stoll. Josiah Stoll hires Joseph Smith because he is known as a treasure seeker, and Stoll believes that Smith can help him find a lost Spanish silver mine in Pennsylvania. In 1827, Joseph and Emma would ask her parents, Isaac and Elizabeth Hale, for their blessing in marriage. The blessing is refused because Joseph is considered an outsider, but also possibly because he failed to find the lost Spanish silver mine. The two of them would elope anyways, getting married in New York that same year, and also Joseph Smith would claim to find the golden plates again at the Hill Cumorah. From 1827 to 1830, Emma Smith would help in translation, being a scribe for Joseph Smith and also feeling the plates through cloth. She claimed that she never actually saw the golden plates, but only that she felt something heavy and metallic, something that was never fully revealed to her. Emma and Joseph's marriage was extremely difficult in many different ways. For instance, she gave birth 9 times in her life. However, only 4 of those children survived past the age of 2. When she was being baptized in 1830, it was before a jeering crowd in New York. Later that day, she was supposed to be confirmed by her husband. However, he was arrested for disorderly conduct. Her confirmation had to be delayed. In July of 1830, Joseph Smith would also dictate Doctrine and Covenants 25, which would declare Emma an elect of God and give her certain duties that were usually exclusive to men, such as selecting the hymns for the church. D&C 25 marks a pattern by Joseph Smith where he would use divine revelation to communicate or in some ways undermine and spite his own wife. For instance, in 1833, he publishes Word of Wisdom, which is still followed by Mormons today. Word of Wisdom is why Mormons don't drink alcohol, tea, coffee, smoke or chew tobacco, or take recreational drugs. And according to David Whitmer, as well as Brigham Young, this was done in order to solve a dispute between him and Emma. This is from David Whitmer in the Des Moines Daily News in 1886. Some of the men were excessive chewers of tobacco, and their disgusting slobbering and spitting caused Mrs. Smith to make the ironical remark that it would be a good thing if revelation could be had declaring the use of tobacco a sin and commanding its suppression. The matter was taken up and joked about. One of the brethren suggested that the revelation should also provide for a total abstinence from tea and coffee drinking, intending this as a counter dig at the sisters. Sure enough, the subject was afterward taken up in dead earnest, and the word of wisdom was the result. And this is from Brigham Young. The complaints of his wife at having to clean so filthy a floor made the prophet think upon the matter, and he inquired of the Lord relating to the conduct of the elders in using tobacco, and the revelation known as the word of wisdom was the result of his inquiry. Now remember that Joseph Smith never stopped smoking or drinking until his death in 1844. He still drank tea, he still drank wine and alcohol in general, and he also occasionally smoked cigars. Then there was the polygamy. According to early Mormons such as Orson Pratt, Oliver Cowdery, as well as Brigham Young, Joseph Smith may have practiced polygamy as early as 1831. According to a Mary Elizabeth Rollins, who was 12 years old at the time, Joseph Smith revealed to her in a private conversation that God had chosen her to be his first plural wife. She refused, marrying later in 1835. However, she would become Joseph Smith's 6th wife in 1842. There's also the case of Fanny Alger, who was hired at the age of 16 in 1832 to work for the Smith household, either as a dairymaid or as a house servant. In 1836, it is believed that Emma Smith caught the two of them in embrace somewhere and was so enraged that she had Fanny sent away. This is still, again, disputed. We don't exactly know for sure what happened. However, according to Oliver Cowdery, who was later excommunicated for saying this, he claimed that Joseph Smith had a dirty, nasty, filthy affair with her. This is also around the time when Joseph Smith starts the practice of sealing, a religious ceremony that ties people together throughout eternity, and a practice that he would call celestial marriage in order to disguise the fact that it was polygamy. Joseph Smith may have been sealed to Fanny Alger, however, it's unconfirmed. The first confirmed sealing of Joseph Smith was between him and Louisa Beamon, not even his own wife, Emma Smith. There's also a speculative account by W. W. Phelps, one of the earliest Mormons, in 1861, where he claims that Joseph Smith preached a sermon in 1831 where he called for Mormons to have multiple Native American wives, calling them the descendants of Nephites and Lamanites, claiming that they should have children with them, that their posterity may become white, delightsome, and just. Now bear in mind this is all happening while the Smiths have to relocate multiple times, from New York to Pennsylvania to Ohio to Missouri and then later to Nauvoo, Illinois. Throughout this, though, Emma Smith, despite being unaware of the polygamy, is still quite warm and attached to Joseph, writing here in 1839 while he's in prison in Missouri, "I shall live and am yet willing to suffer more, if it is the will of kind heaven that I should for your sake." Some of the girls who were sealed to or by Joseph Smith in plural marriage were as young as 14 years old, such as Helen Mar Kimball, who wrote, "Smith said to me, if you will take this step, it will ensure your eternal salvation and exaltation, and that of your father's household and all of your kindred." She was coerced. There's extreme pressure to accept that at the impressionable age of 14. There's also the case of Sarah Pratt. She was proposed to while she was still married to Orson Pratt, who was away on business. She refuses, and then suddenly rumors start spreading that she's having an affair with John C. Bennett, the mayor of Nauvoo. It's also later claimed by Sarah Pratt that Joseph was using John C. Bennett to perform abortions on people who might have become pregnant under his own actions. According to Hiram Smith in an affidavit from 1842, this is corroborated, claiming that Bennett offered medicine to produce abortions to anyone who might need one. Now, publicly speaking, for the entirety of her life, Emma would never admit that Joseph Smith was practicing polygamy. She would publicly condemn it for years. However, even privately speaking, she was largely unaware as to the extent of which it was being practiced. For example, in 1843, she tries to appease her husband by allowing him to have a controlled amount of plural wives. So, in response to this, Joseph lets her choose who he should marry. She chooses the Partridge sisters, who had been living with the family at the time. However, she doesn't know that the two had been sealed to Joseph Smith already, unbeknownst to each other. So, Joseph Smith has them sealed to him a second time, this time with Emma Smith being present. This doesn't last, and Emma Smith then throws out the Partridge sisters out of the house a few days later. Later, in July of 1843, Joseph Smith then presents Emma with D&C 132, claiming that he's received a revelation from God that she must consent to his plural marriages. If not, she'll be destroyed. Emma Smith responds to this by setting the document on fire. The next day, the two of them agree that Joseph Smith will not have any more plural marriages without Emma Smith's consent. After Joseph and his brother Hiram are killed in Carthage in 1844, this creates a series of financial issues for Emma Smith, because she inherits all of Joseph's debt. However, his property is unclear because he didn't write a will. It's uncertain as to what property belongs to Joseph and what property belonged to the church. While this is happening, Brigham Young starts seizing that same property, claiming that it is for the church, while also possibly enriching himself in the process. There's also the succession crisis, in that it's unclear who is to become the next president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Originally, it was supposed to be Hiram. However, he was killed alongside Joseph in Carthage. It was then supposed to be Joseph's brother Samuel. However, he dies a month later under mysterious circumstances, with some people claiming that he was poisoned. It's later decided that Brigham Young is to become the next president of the church. However, Emma Smith disagrees with this. And later, when Brigham Young decides to take the Mormons west to where they will eventually land in Salt Lake City, she decides to stay in Nauvoo. Emma would then marry Louis C. Bidamon on December 23, 1847, Joseph Smith's birthday. They would have no children together. However, Bidamon would later father a child with Nancy Abercrombie, another woman that he would marry after Emma's death. She would later join the RLDS, an offshoot of the LDS Church, and she would die at the age of 74 in Nauvoo, Illinois in the year 1879.